Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Packaging Experience podcast. We're excited to have our very first guest on the Packaging Experience. Jeff is in the back handling production for us today, but we always have Nicolas, and then today we also have Rodrigo. Nicolas, if you want to kind of say hello and then introduce Rodrigo to everybody, and of course, thank you guys for joining.
Hello, everyone. I'm really happy to have here Rodrigo. I know him very well. I used to work with him, so only the best comments about his character and professional career. Rodrigo, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for hosting me and giving us a chance as TIPA to tell you a little bit more about our story in compostables. For myself, I live just north of Miami, South Florida, with my family. I've been in packaging for 15 years. Most of those 15 years, which were with one of the largest packaging companies globally, both in the rigid and flexible packaging space. I can tell you I'm not a chemist. I'm more of management engineering background. And I like to say that I've been a consumer all of my life. So that maybe gets me to a place where I can speak about packaging in general.
That is awesome. Welcome, Rodrigo. Thank you so much for joining us today and taking time out of your day. We really appreciate it. Maybe we could start off with, you gave us a little bit of your personal background, but just in case people don't know who TIPA is and what they do, can you give us a little bit of background on TIPA?
Sure. Thank you. So, TIPA was born over a decade ago, close to 15 years ago. CEO, our CEO and founder, Daphna, she really looked into ways to address the gap in circularity for flexible packaging, hardest to recycle packaging around. And she came up with a great idea. Nature created the perfect packaging. So think about it like an orange peel. It protects the fruit, and then it goes back to earth and composts. And I think the best thing that we can highlight is that composting is nature's way to recycle. So TIPA invested heavily to solve for these hard to recycle materials in flexible packaging, and then have been able to create technology with an IP behind it that allows us to bring to market materials that mimic the way conventional plastics behave today. We understand it's only going to be done through a collaborative approach, and that allows us to work with existing raw materials, existing assets, and work with the whole industry to try to bring these solutions as another part of a sustainability portfolio that is needed in a world where more and more we see the value of bringing these types of solutions forward.
Super cool. So, just kind of thinking about that, like obviously you guys are an expert and a leader in compostable. And I think, just out there, when you're talking to anybody about packaging, there's a lot of misconceptions about compostable. What's the difference between compostable and biodegradable, for example? So what are some myths that you hear about compostable films? And then how do you, as and TIPA in general, how do they address those and try to, I guess, correct those misconceptions out there in the market?
Yeah, Tom, that's a really good one. The fact is that we, as TIPA, we play a very important role in education, and a lot of our customers who have been for decades and many, many years in packaging themselves, they're getting questions, they're getting asked. Their customers and consumers in general want these solutions, and they need help being able to address how to approach it. We like to take a simplistic approach, but there's nuances, right? One of those things is biodegradability as a claim versus compostability as a claim. And the one thing about biodegradable, which is a true statement, most everything is going to biodegrade in time. It'll break down into smaller pieces. Exceptions of those are minerals, fossil fuels, some forever chemicals that we're all aware of. And what happens with those is that they're going to be staying around us forever, most of these could be leaving harmful residues behind. So I told you earlier, I live in Florida. I walk out of here in the summer, I'm starting to biodegrade myself with the heat and the humidity out there, right? That's the way
Yeah.
it looks. But when it comes to compostables, and the misconception is it's compostable, and in our space, it's a regulated term. That's the key, right? Especially when we talk about certified compostable. TIPA is all about certified compostable, and what that looks like, it's required to meet what looks like time-bound regulatory standards on how it will break down, and it'll break down into water, carbon dioxide, biomass, and it's tested. And there's an ecotoxicity testing that goes around to make sure it's not leaving any harmful residues behind. So TIPA takes the approach of certified compostability, and specifically home certified compostability, because when I ask a lot of people, hey, how do you recycle at home? They can tell me about how they're able to put together their glass and their plastics into a waste bin, and then have waste collection take care of it. They don't know that it's being recycled or if it's being recycled, but they believe they are actually recycling. Um, and then when I ask people, are you composting at home? Most people say, what is composting, or what are you talking about? But the ability to compost at home is there. The ability to create your own compost is there. And most of rural America and rural world and lesser developed countries in the world don't have a waste collection stream. They learned to compost centuries ago, if not thousands of years ago. It was around, it's been around us forever. So this allows us to bring a solution to everyone's hands. Home compostability doesn't allow you to do it. I do it at home. Look, I can get away with saying I didn't know about this because 15 years and the largest packaging companies doesn't really get you into these types of details. Recycling is um, the bigger topic today. What I cannot compost at home, I can pay a company if a service to come and collect it, and they compost, and then they distribute it to their customers, and as rich soil that's going to help uh, uh,
I think Rodrigo,
nourish
that
nourish the environment.
I think that's something that you just mentioned is very important about the educational part. Being me before working at TIPA in the past, I didn't know much about compostability, and I think that recyclability has better marketing. And everyone knows at home, okay, separate this for recycle, and this goes in this bin. But unless you start to get involved in any way, compostability, although it has been existing for many, many years, as you mentioned, people don't know about it, and they have a lot of confusion, misconception on what compostability is. So we thank you for being in this space, because we're trying to educate, as your company is doing, a lot of people to start getting involved in the sustainability call to action. And I guess this is that's one of the main challenges that compostability has, that a lot of people don't know yet how can they do it, and what is the good for the planet, or in terms of plastic, compostable plastic, how does it behave? Like, because people might relate the banana peel, the orange peel, but can you explain us a little bit more how that behavior of the food waste is similar to the compostable film?
Yeah, thank you, Nick. I'd like to also emphasize that this doesn't promote littering. Let's not confuse a compostable package uh, with being able to dispose of it anywhere at any place, because now you don't need to make sure that it goes into the right system. Just like you wouldn't start throwing banana peels and orange peels into your backyard.
Why?
I mean, they will compost, of course, over time, but it'll create probably a couple of other challenges in your backyard. It's not going to work there. So we're not promoting that, and we hear some initiative that look like, hey, let's make it marine biodegradable, because then if someone just throws it out in the water streams or in the ocean, it's going to biodegrade. Well, then that's kind of seems like you're telling people it's okay to do it. No, it's not okay to do it. That's why there's recycled streams, and that's why we separate it. And so, back to your question, it does take some common sense and some education, and emphasizing that when it comes to compostability, most people have run across it because they've seen how leaves turn, fall, grass is cut, and it's okay for those materials or for those to disintegrate right there where it happens. It's not okay to do that with what we're consuming.
That's good. I did want to just, I have so many questions for you. But one of them is a little bit on the certification, because we were working on getting some certified pre-lambs for compostability with my old company before I moved to Freedom. And at that point, we were certifying through BPI, but they only had industrial composting. And then we would, when we wanted to do home compostable standard, we would go to TUV Austria because they had a home compostable. Do you see the United States and BPI having a home compostable standard here in the future, or does it already exist? And I just didn't know that because I haven't been in that space for a while.
Yeah, so what you described is absolutely right. So the certification bodies in the U.S. and when it comes um, to certifications, the first approach is through a BPI or CMA, and both of those will work towards an industrial compostable certification. TUV, as you mentioned, another one, Dincerco. They're European and also globally accepted. They do have a certified home compostable certification. The difference between the two, it's really the conditions and the scale. So when it comes to industrial or commercial composting, um, I'm not I'm not able to count the latest, but it's over 3,000 industrial or commercial composting facilities just in the U.S. Close to 3,000 now. Now, when we talk about 3,000, when it comes to food scraps, and a lot of the stuff that we throw away are food scraps. There's a lot of food scraps being disposed of. They end up in a landfill. People are not concerned so much about what that is creating with the methane, the methane is some 25, 30 times worse than carbon dioxide. That goes into a landfill. That's what it's going to turn into. But the food scraps are the ideal. The ideal part of a compost pile when you're talking about nourishment and nutrition. Most of those industrial and commercial composting facilities are taking your leafy greens and your yard scraps, and some of those that could be also from farming. That's what they were created to. They're not able to handle food scraps. So from 3,000, it's less than 300 that'll take food scraps. And when you look at those that take food scraps, then you're talking about a much lesser amount that will actually take the packaging or the compostable packaging alongside those food scraps. And so industrial composters play a big role. They also play a big role in being able to scale up versus a home situation. Home just makes it more convenient. And I mentioned time bound because the conditions in an industrial composter are going to be higher temperatures um, and more developed mechanically and automated systems to be able to aerate and do a couple of other things. Those are going to help break down the materials faster. Whereas at home, anywhere between 6 to 12 months, you're going to be able to see that happen. It's not about burying what needs to be composted, because I've heard some people say, well, I took your packaging, I dug up a hole, I threw it in my backyard, I dug it back out in 6 months, it was still there. Yeah, everything we throw and or we cover up, not much is going to happen. In the case of compostable packaging, it's going to be inert. Other things that are going to decompose are going to become methane, and that's the difference. But more and more, what people are seeing, when I say people, those facilities that are accepting also the compostable packaging, is that a lot of food waste already comes in compostable and in packaging in general. It needs to be separated if it's not compostable. now compostable package, it helps with some of the thermal properties required in a compost pile. And these facilities are welcoming them after they see the benefit that bringing in the food scraps with the packaging without having to sort it, and thermal properties and other benefits. We're very excited to see that as more and more of these facilities come on board. And of course, when we're talking about TIPA focusing on home certification, which is the bigger challenge, once you have home certification, the likelihood of being able to run through an industrial composter is super high as well. So you're actually being able to work towards both.
Yeah, I mean, that's a ton of great information, and it's really interesting, right? Because the three of us being in Florida, it's really easy to home compost here and have stuff break down. But like, if you put something into a composter in Wisconsin in December, probably not much is going to happen because it's so cold, right? And then once it gets into the summer, the composting speeds up. So it is very temperature dependent. But I just love just the overall state of the world, where a lot of people are starting to grow their own fruits and vegetables in their garden. So wanting to have a home composter is becoming more common. Home composting eliminates the problem of getting it from your house and all the fuel or energy to get it from your house once you're done with it to the industrial composter if they end up accepting packaging. So that's beautiful. And then the other thing is like that stark contrast that you just made of recycling. We try to clean it, pull off labels, and you're wasting water and all that stuff, and then you're putting it in a bin and it's going back. With home composting, it's like, no, leave the coffee grounds in there, leave whatever the residue of the food scraps are in there. And that's only going to speed up your composting, as it's probably drawing in more buds with the scent and everything that's in those food scraps to bring more buds. And then, the bugs are just going to, they'll eat anything, whether it's food or the plastic, the bioplastic and compostable structures. So I just love the approach of compost, home composting, and like that farm to table approach of you're growing your own fruits locally. It just creates a different dynamic with what we're used to, as far as like, hey, I just bought a bunch of avocados that were grown in Chile, and then they took a trip all the way to this plant to get co-packed or whatever, and then they finally make it to us. But if you're growing locally and composting locally, there's a ton of less energy used in the food supply chain, which is really cool. But here's some questions that I always wondered, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners wonder, is like, okay, this package is designed to break down. Does that mean that but does it still do its job, its requirements, as far as, does it have barrier? Does it inhibit shelf life? Like all those things. So, moving to a compostable structure, do you take a step back in packaging performance by having that structure, or does it perform similar to your traditional petroleum-based plastics that are out there?
Yeah, this is where TIPA's technology and IP comes into play. There are several solutions that are compostable that would actually take care of the simpler things in life, like carrying a produce bag. You're going to use it to carry your tomatoes from the grocery store to your home. Those don't require any performance except for holding the product inside. That's not where TIPA decided to play. TIPA decided to play into the harder to the higher performance, harder to recycle materials. And as you just described, some of those require barrier and performance. And the other thing that TIPA decided to do, it needed to be very much a seamless integration with conventional plastics. So when it comes to generation one, we can start talking about what the portfolio looks like, but rather than saying that, generation one tackled what looks more like, in the consumer space, fresh produce, or frozen produce and bakery. Those products that we buy have lesser requirements of a shelf life. So when TIPA targets those solutions, it's a film. It's just a sealant film that's able to be printed and formed into a bag, what we have been able to find with compostable films versus a regular PE film for your produce bags, call it an apple bag with a zipper, whatever we want to think about, is that compostable, our flexible compostable films are more permeable. Rather than providing a barrier, it provides breathability, which is good in the fresh produce space. In the fresh produce space, breathability is going to allow CO2 to come out and oxygen to come in and balance itself. That actually prolongs the shelf life, which should be a good thing, right? Intuitively, that should be a good thing. But then when it comes to generation 2, generation 3 types of solutions, there's where the mid barrier, higher barrier types of materials come through, and those come in the form of laminates. So we would be talking about laminates that perform like a polyester polyethylene type PE, we call it, or BOPP. Some of those, when they look like recycle ready materials, are 2 layers of the same material, 3 layers, or multiple layers of the same material to try to achieve higher barrier. So the magic happens with TIPA, with our sealing layers, our sealing films, because sealability, bond strength, and just the performance of our sealing layers or sealing films are quite equivalent, comparable, and seamless integration with equipment today. And that allows us to be able to then build the structures on top of it, which could be like a metallized structure, just like you metalize a PE or metalize a BOPP. We can metalize TIPA sealing layers to increase the barrier, and then have a good printing layer on top of that that's also compostable. So the whole structure brings comparable performance in machinability, and in the barrier requirements. And that's where TIPA really has spent most of its time invested in developing solutions.
Yeah, that's a huge point, right? If you required special piece of capital equipment to run compostable compared to standard equipment, it would almost be a non-starter for TIPA to get even off the ground, right? So obviously you guys are engineering and working on resins and R&D and stuff to make sure that they're working on the equipment that's out there today. So I'm assuming, and maybe this is a bad assumption, but I'm assuming you're seeing these things being extruded on like a standard extruder, running on a standard, let's say flexo rotogravure or digital press, going through vertical form, fill, and seal. You've seen all these things perform handsomely with compostable, or is there still a bit of a struggle there?
So the way we approach the market, because we don't own any of these assets, we work with proven and very reputable market leading companies in the space. So when we talk about partnerships with converters, and we can talk about blown film extrusion as an example. Our blown film extrusion partner is Charternex CNG, world class, one of the largest in the world. When they run our formulations through their extrusion lines, it's seamless integration. We work together to make sure that we came to a point where when they take out their PE lines and put in our compostable formulations in there, it's equivalent run rates, it's equivalent waste, it's equivalent um, re, um, recovery of material to be able to come back with similar and or equivalent performance. And the same happens when we go into a lamination conversion or a printing conversion. Um, it's, when it comes to forming bags, I think if we were to talk about a Totani or a Hudson Sharp, um, a lot of times the only change that's required, if any, is we need to come from lower temperatures, which is actually a good thing. Lower temperatures and equivalent cycle times are going to reduce energy consumption. Are we going to be able to track that as one of the benefits? Most people don't track it anyway, but it is a benefit, lower energy consumption.
It
And
is
the other
data
thing
that is data that you can measure in the future if you want to bulk it up on the sustainability efforts. And what you're saying, we were joking the other day with Tom when we traveled to Canada, saying comparing Canada to the US, and we were saying it's not the same, but it's almost the same. I can tell by experience, but by working at TIPA in the past, that it's not exactly the same as traditional plastic, but it's almost the same. You just need a little of adjustments and guidance from the TIPA team So initially they can run something and they might not work exactly with the same setups, but with a few variations that the team knows how to guide, it will be as equivalent. So that's the beauty of compostable film. It will perform almost the same or sometimes even better. And sorry that I interrupt, but I was going to forget something. When Rodrigo was talking about the breathability, in a previous podcast, we were talking about the extended shelf life through packaging. And remember, Tom, that I was mentioned that one of the most breathability structures that they can use with modified atmosphere is nylon, polyamide.
Mhm.
TIPA structure behaves very similar to the
To
nylon
nylon.
in terms of breathability, and that's what provides the modified humidity that I was mentioning in the other podcast. And if even it can be even combined with modified atmosphere if you need even more extended shelf life. So that was the first generation of TPAD, or what Rodrigo was mentioned that where they first approached fresh produce. So that's something that I didn't want to forget mentioning and touching in more further in the podcast when we were changing the subject.
No, and that's huge. And like, let's say you're comparing people moving to, let's say it's a PE construction and they want to go sustainable, and they're looking at either moving to like a mono material PE laminated structure, like a PE to PE, like maybe it's MDO to a standard low linear density, or they're looking at compostable. The move to like a PE construction it sounds like it's going to be more difficult because nylon is easier to run than just straight PE. We got to reduce. We have to add thickness because it's just not as dimensionally stable as like PET would be. We have to slow down our cycle times because it's thicker to get the durability. So then you have to slow down your cycle time so the heat has enough time to transfer through. And we can't run. PET is amazing. You can run at like 400 degrees Fahrenheit and it doesn't burn the film. If you're going pure PE, you're going to burn right through that bag at 400 degrees. So you're really dropping the temperatures down like you were just saying you would do in compostable, but it also impacts your cycle count of bags per minute. You know, I have customers that are typically running like a certain size bag at 67 and they're at like 61 now, 62 with pure PE. And it sounds like you can build a little bit more on the compostable side to not take a step back in your throughput. And if you guys, and I know you guys both know this, if you work with co-packers, the most important thing they care about is not having like wasted bags that don't form and seal, and then slowing down. They're all about throughput. So it's like, hey, you can do this, but now you're running 10% slower. They're like, that raises my cost so much that I can't really compete on bids for Aldi or Great Value or stuff like that, because now your labor cost per bag has just gone up dramatically because you're just running slower. So that's super interesting that you're getting nylon like results on compostable structures. So that's really how the sausage is made for you guys. Like, as far as, is it out there, is it running and stuff like that. So now that we
Hey
kind of
Tom,
understand,
so
go ahead.
not to cut you off, it's how many people have access to an MDO line anyway?
Not many. Not many. I
Now
think
that's
that
a huge investment, and it takes
yeah,
about a year and a half to be able to put it into play. It's difficult. I mean, I'm not bashing it. Mono material is great, but selling to the largest CPGs on recycle ready. First of all, why do you put more material into the supply chain, into the consumer's hands? That is also going to end up being in a right now, because of the recycling systems not working with us the way we would like them to. We need to do better in that. That's where recycle ready, not recycling, will take place. And MDO lines are pretty expensive. So just to double down on that, um, you know, put some Teflon on it, make sure the sealing gels are working well, and
yeah,
you're running like you were running before at lower temperatures. And I've seen this happen within 15 minutes of changing over materials. And it's quite remarkable because I've seen it take a lot longer just when conventional plastic switched to another supplier. It's a lot of work.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we're seeing some really good advancements in seal jaw technology with their coating now. You know, back in the day, it was just like Teflon tape, just throw it over your seal jaws. But now they're coming like with the Hasselroy or the chromium coated jaws that do a really nice job with those compostable structures, and making sure they're just not sticking to the seal jaw and you're pulling ink off or what have you, and you're getting solid seals. All right, so shifting gears a little bit about like how it runs on equipment, does it perform, all that fun stuff. what is your feel for the United States or the market today for compostable? Is there growing demand for it? Are people more and more interested as just everybody's getting more educated? And there's obviously everybody is more focused on sustainability now than they were 30 years ago, right? The consumers actually factoring that into their decision on what I'm going to buy. Is this brand really being environmentally responsible? Is their message good? Are they just giving stuff lip service? So overall, what is your feeling of like momentum for compostable films in the United States right now?
Yeah, for I'll have to say that for TIPA, it's our fastest and fastest growing market and our largest potential. Um, um, most most packaging companies will will believe they had a good year and between 5 to 6% growth, or 6 to 8 would be an amazing year growth. With compostable packaging, we're seeing double digit, of course, coming from a lower baseline, but the adoption rate is there, and it's there when people have a story to tell that relates to our product. Some people ask us, what does that look like? Well, those that are in the organic space believe in wellness and believe in doing what's good, um, don't see themselves putting their products in a conventional packaging, and that's true in North America as in the U.S. as it would be anywhere else. Now we can follow a cue from Europe. Europe was in compostability before it became a bigger thing in the U.S. Um, and now people are more and more in tune with sustainability, and you know those top trending features that drive brand value, sustainable features drive brand value. And we all saw a shift about a year and a half ago on how paperization became a thing, right? So paper is so good. Paper was made to be recycled, but paper feels good because it comes from trees and it can go back to the earth. And everything needed to be paper, and paper is a great material, just doesn't provide barriers. So how do you do that? And then a favorable opinion that brands are looking to be able to claim is, okay, it's biodegradable, but as I mentioned earlier, that's such a large claim.
Yeah.
And it's legally in packaging, it's illegal in packaging to claim biodegradability, that because it's a false statement just because of what I explained earlier. Now, there is a gap to understanding biodegradability versus compostability. But when it comes to compostability, if people understand what compostability is all about, they will choose to continue to move in that direction. They see the value because the value it brings to the brand. And we see brands growing because of sustainability claims. We also see them growing when there's a clear objective like compostability. So I'm going to be going out on a limb. If 2024 was about paperization and 2025 has been about biodegradability, although we really don't believe that that is the right approach, I'm going to claim that 2026 is going to be more about compostability in the US. And every single time we've seen these trends, a lot of people showed up late to the party. And that's really what most companies should be thinking about today. It's a favorable opinion to your brand. It's something you need to get ahead of, and not a lot of people. Some of those people could be late to the party, and that could backfire because the technology, while we are here and while we work with most anyone and everyone, about shelf life, it takes time, about making sure that there's buy-in from marketing and from the rest of the organization, that makes a business case for it. It also takes time. So people need to realize that this is it's not nice to have. It's here, and it's good for the environment. And it's just
Rodrigo,
another
something
solution.
that we haven't mentioned today is when you were comparing biodegradability versus compostability. The time when you can convert something that was going to be waste versus what is compostable. We haven't mentioned the time, but it's uncompostable is 6 months in the right conditions, and industrial compostable is 3 months.
Mhm.
And that's something that a lot of people don't know. Like any other waste material, even if it's organic and you throw it into the landfill, it could last a couple of years and even 100 years because it's inert. So that's a big thing that in less than a year, in both the scenarios, in less than half of a year, you can convert what is going to be waste into something good, into something better. So
Yeah.
I just noted that we haven't mentioned the time frame that compostability offers in this podcast. So I wanted to highlight it.
Yeah, 3 months is incredible. And like Rodrigo, like you mentioned, they're stirring the pot, they're adding heat and stuff like that to speed up the compostable deal. Where with home composting, you're kind of just relating. So it does make sense that it's 6 months for home and 3 for industrial. But I mean, to your point, Nico, nothing else was really going through a cycle from into packaging back into usable compost in 3 to 6 months is amazing, right? That's a nice tight circular economy there. All right, so let's say I am the head of sustainability for brand XYZ. I happen to be watching this particular podcast, and then you just sounded the alarm. You don't want to be late for the game for 2026. So I come to you with all of my current packaging and I say, Rodrigo, I want to go down the compostable road. How does TIPA help me start that process? Because like you just said, it's not something that happens overnight. There's a lot of production tests and stuff like that. So how do you talk to a brand and help them on that journey from a single-use plastic to a compostable structure for their packaging?
Yeah, it all comes together with, of course, the values that those brands want to bring to their consumers, the value that TIPA and the beliefs and the story that TIPA can also help put together for that brand. And that looks we have very good marketing, and that looks like a very good marketing collaboration when we do that with brands. When it comes to coming in and the first steps, it's fair to say that we cannot assume or even mislead the world to believe that compostable packaging is going to be at parity cost-wise with conventional plastics. That would be a misconception. Um, so we have to come to terms that that's an investment. It's not just about being able to make an impact with how things are broken down and in 3 to 6 months that they can come back to earth and they can back to soil and re-nourish. That is all about regenerative, right? When it comes to circularity, and you mentioned circularity, the approach to circularity and packaging is we got to deal with these materials because they're going to be here forever. That's the circular approach. They're going to be here forever. With compostables, no, they're not going to be here forever because they're going to go back to where they came from. That's the approach. But when it comes to working with these companies and understanding that that story resonates with us and with them, then we look at their portfolio. We look at what their current setup looks like and what their technical requirements will be, both on performance and machinability. And then we make a proposal on which one of our materials and our solutions, all of them commercially available, would be suitable for their needs. We go and test and trial like any other company would do to try to be able to get that business to work. And then we always strongly suggest to go into a shelf life and testing just to make sure that the performance that they're looking for is going to be there. As an example, if a company that's doing nutrition in a powder type of beverage form in a stick pack comes to us and says, "Well, we're targeting 24 months of shelf life." You're only going to get that with aluminum foil, and that's not going to be recyclable or compostable. So if that's what you're going to do with your product, and that's what you want to market you want to go to the market with, compostable may not be a solution. So we educate as well. That's part of what we talk to them about. And then we get the buy-in from the technical side. We get the buy-in from the sales side, which is really an integrated sales approach. We're able to go with our customers or into the sales teams of the conversion partners that we work with or converter customers that we work with and talk to their customers together to let them know what this is going to look like, advise them, and then it's a ramp up and a scale launch if the trials are done. It doesn't look very different from how conventional companies approach business. It's very much the same. Now, with our experience, we're hoping to make it a lot easier. With our technical background and support, we believe we can make it a lot easier.
That's really interesting, and I'm sure that hoping that you're getting contacted on a regular basis of people moving into compostable. But what I really like about what you said now is obviously the pricing's not at parity, but what you said earlier is you're just getting more and more opportunities to move into compostable. So I feel like the parity is going to come and start to level out as the economies of scale and the demand for compostable grows, right? If 98% of the market is doing PET, PE, but in 20 years, 50% of the market is doing compostable. That's tons and tons and tons of compostable resin demand that hopefully economies of scale start kicking in. And then there is a parity and it makes it easier for these brands to make a transition. So that's an exciting thing where hopefully we get to that critical mass point and TIPAs just can't even keep up with supplying resins for these guys on the R&D side to blow them. Are there things like...
I think that companies who wants to move into compostability, they have to be motivated by two different things. One could be the president, CEO, or leaders in the company that believes in sustainability by heart. That's something that can make them move to that. But the other option, and knowing what Rodrigo was mentioning, that knowing that it's more expensive, it is an investment. So you can see this as an investment on marketing. Most of the companies always have a competitor. So what your tomato how your tomatoes, your cucumbers, your coffee, anything looks different from your competitors. No, because our graphics do like this and yours do like that. So it's not a real differentiator. But if they invest in something that is trendy, like sustainability, something that is compostable, that's a real differentiator. So might be more expensive if you're comparing packaging versus packaging. But if you put that money into the marketing budget as a differentiator in the industry, it's not so expensive. And normally sustainability has a lot of free press involved. And every time someone is doing something, it becomes a trend. So it could be a trend in social media. It could be a trend in a specialized magazine. So that investment is what a lot of companies spend a lot of money trying to create a commercial, create a campaign to differentiate themselves. So this is a real differentiator, not only on the graphics, not only it's a real claim, a different claim. So I think it's worth a shot for those who wants to go to that party early, and they're going to be ready for when the big retailers and wholesalers start to demand it as a must, I guess.
Yeah,
Point.
That's an excellent point, Nico. And there's CEOs and C-suite guys out there are like, no, they can't get off of just looking at fixed. So you think from a fitment standpoint, and I could talk about this with you all day. I love this stuff, but from a fitment standpoint, you're seeing that investment come behind it from Presto or Elplast or other fitment manufacturers to make sure that they have a certified compostable construction or for their
because for the nutraceutical space, anything that's going to have and zippers are very important for freshness as well. So let's talk. We have paperization is so important. We have a certified compostable paper laminated board sealing, and what that looks like, it can be metallized or non-metallized. In the non-metallized version, you're going to have lesser barrier properties, of course, for water vapor, oxygen transmission. And so what happens is a lot of these stick packs regularly may be packaged in a folding carton. Why? Because it looks like paper as well. Well, when we can put that on a pouch that has a metallized layer to it as well, it looks like paper on the outside, and it's a simpler mid-barrier type stick pack inside. What we've been able to tell is that without that pouch, that metallized pouch, we take it to when the powder starts clumping, right? That's really what triggers the shelf life. So on conventional plastics versus compostables, maybe for our materials, it's 2 weeks before that happens. When we put it on the pouch versus the folding carton, there's no difference. The shelf life is equivalent. And we've done this for 18 months, 24 months, and we keep going. And just the barrier properties that metallized, compostable, paper-looking pouch, plus the stick packs that go into that pouch, that also paper-looking, great durability, good machinability, good printability, everything equivalent, they behave equivalently to what you would have even on those tape backs that now require an aluminum foil, but they come in a cardboard or a carton box or a printed carton box, and they don't have any barrier secondary packaging, so they bulletproof it with foil. Because I can't call it anything else; it's just bulletproofing it, because they're not going to get the material because of their supply chain or just because of the way their sales cycle happens. They need 24 months. Well, you can get that too. You just got to design for it.
Right. Where so much is like make the master bag that's holding it as cheap as possible, drive out all costs there, because all of the barrier and everything we're putting on the inner stick packs, but by adding a little bit of foil to your master bag, then you're right there. And metallizing, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, it's not a very expensive process, right? To metallize something to add barrier.
I can tell you it's going to be cheaper than foil.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so switching gears on the U.S. market, do you have any like cool, I guess, what's the word I'm looking for? Like success stories of different brands. What types of brands or markets are really leading the charge in compostable? And like, what are some of these brands that have made the switch, let's say a year or two ago? What are they telling you as feedback after they've been running for a while of the success of compostable and how it's working for them?
Yeah, there's a couple of companies that we really love just because the way they approach and their approach to compostability and how they embrace they just embrace sustainability in this way. Um, and we learn from them as much as we try to help them learn with us. So this may be a good place to bookmark the podcast, because some people will want to come back and listen to this one if they missed out on earlier, what we shared earlier. Organic asparagus, and I'm gonna call it a success story. And Nico is very familiar to it because Nico was instrumental in driving this business when he was with TIPA. Organic asparagus sold through one of the major fresh responsible retailers in that we all know and that we all shop at. When I went to the store where our packaging was on the shelf, it was sitting right next to organic asparagus, beautiful organic asparagus from Hippie Organics. I can give them a shout out. Sitting right next to a bag that was in conventional plastic, non-organic. So I'll tell you, the price point was non-organic, $360 on the 12-ounce bag. On the compostable packaging, organics, which are always going to be premium, $430. So you had less than $1 for the consumer that's shopping at this place. It's a no-brainer. Why would you not take these beautiful organic asparagus on a breathable, compostable package that's going to have better shelf life? You know how asparagus can spoil than the other brand. Well, it went through the shelves. After a week, I couldn't find it again, because I just love coming into this retail and trying to get it. That's a great success story. But the other thing that puts this into context, is that when you're talking procurement speak, what was the actual change in cost? And they talk into the questions become, is my packaging going to be twice as expensive, right? Well, this is why you got to bookmark it, because in a $2 bag where packaging may be 2 cents, conventional PE, you take it to a compostable package, and rather than retailing at $2, it's going to retail at $2.05. You're going to make up for the change in cost. Called 2 cents versus 6, 3x. Is that really going to hurt the consumer? And someone's going to be concerned about paying it? Yeah, the procurement speak is I'm paying 3 more times.
Yeah.
But the retailer and the consumer is only seeing a 5-cent increase, which is what? I mean,
Nominal.
2.5 on a
Yeah.
$2.
You don't feel it as a consumer.
You don't see that. You don't see that in consumer choices as
Oh,
being a challenge.
you don't see the price difference, but but we are seeing the displays on the back, like as you mentioned, like this is organic, okay, good for my health. This is compostable, okay, good for the planet. So you don't see the difference in the price as a consumer, but you can tell and notice what is being advertised to you. So that's really important. That's a very good marketing strategy to catch consumers' attention. So you don't feel it in your budget as a consumer, not that much, but you can see it as a point of awareness that will make you go for the buying, I think.
So what a great story on organics. The other great story is I mentioned pouches and I mentioned compostable zipper structures, certified home compostable zipper structures. These being together in the nutraceutical space, guys, nutraceuticals, which need a child-resistant zipper, both for um, for young kids or for older people that are having to deal with their own medicine, or even if it's vitamins, minerals, everyday stuff that we take, being able to have those features with the beautiful branding that goes on a pouch versus a small rigid bottle that only has the basic information. And of course, it's tamper resistant. But you don't have to compromise. You have child resistance. So nutraceuticals is another great success story for TIPA.
So there is now, because again, 3 years ago we were waiting, but we could not find a certified home compostable child resistant zipper, but that exists in the market today.
It exists, and you can get it from Presto Fresh Lock, and then we'll put it together with our laminates, and it's going to give you full functionality, full certified compostability certification, and it's going to look great in a pouch.
Yeah, that's awesome. That is amazing. All right, so we kind of talked about a couple awesome case studies, just segments in general. Anything like, is coffee really, do you see a lot in the cannabis space, coffee space, because that's where we were working before? Has that changed? Or are you now seeing, like you mentioned before, like some of the major retailers are finally doing this, and it's not just very specific markets?
The nutraceuticals and the edible space is the same space where whether it's in powders or even in tablets or in gummies. The gummy space we do very well with. So the edibles play very well to that. And I mentioned the child resistant, tapper resistant features. When it comes to brands versus retailers, and I mean this is pretty obvious, but it's maybe not as obvious to the consumer when we go to shop, right? We go to the store. I don't know if it's 85 or 90, or it's a huge number where the largest CPGs own all of those brands.
Yeah.
You don't get a lot of options. And who works with the largest CPGs? Well, of course, the largest converters in the world.
Mhm.
And what does that look like? It looks like efficiency, mass production, and it looks like, yes, bringing the best products to the world that they can. And they've been around for a while, so the economics are optimized. That's what that looks like.
Yeah.
Having said that, that's a few. I mean, we can count and name those companies within the next 30 seconds, even if we had to. But when it comes to the rest of the space, it's if it's not hundreds, it's thousands of brands coming into the market, and as Nico mentioned, they want to differentiate themselves. Some of them make it, some of them don't. But how do they differentiate themselves? What the retailers are telling them: you want shelf space, give me a plus, give me something better, and let it be in sustainability. What are you bringing aside from this really delicious, nutritional, beautiful product that is going to get you shelf space versus 85% of the stuff that they sell there, that it's got kickbacks, it's got rebates, it's got a lot of benefits, it's got a lot of credibility, the supply chain works. They don't want to, the risk averse, of course. So what does this new brand bring? Well, if they can bring a sustainable component that matches their story and it's in a compostable form, These larger brands, what they're looking at is, some of them think, I'll do it when I'm challenged. Well, the large retailers are telling them, as soon as I have someone else, you're not going to have this premium shelf space. Someone is going to take over. Now, let's see you go through your supply chain and react quickly, because otherwise you're going to lose out on it. And it's a waiting game. It's because the economics play into this when it's optimized versus the up and coming newer brands with newer solutions and very attractive, but also not optimized yet. That's why the economics don't make sense and the scalability needs to get there. It's slower, but it's happening.
Interesting. All right. A couple other things I have for you. I'm sorry, I'm just grilling you with questions, but I just love this stuff so much. All right, so there's a lot of regulatory stuff, that regulations coming down from the government, right? Like where a lot of the major brands like are doing the Ellen MacArthur, like by 2025 or 2026, I have to have sustainability. PFAS is a state by state thing. You mentioned forever chemicals earlier. Usually that refers to PFAS, but there's other things out there. So what's the role of regulations like that, like EPR or PFAS bans, or Prop 65 has been and gone. But the Ellen MacArthur stuff, how is that impacting the role of compostable packaging and its adoption in our space?
Yeah, we started out with reduce, reuse, recycle, right? And then compostables were added after some time, which we welcome. So let's call these nonprofits, and all these nonprofits, mean good, and they're working with the largest converters as well and brands to be able to get some solutions, more sustainable solutions. This is why PCR recycling is so big, and there's such a big push to get it to work better, which we all welcome. That is necessary. This is their focus. This is what they're trying to achieve. Now, when it comes to legislation, this is coming from me, and I'm hoping, hopefully, I would be wrong. Yes, I never thought it was legislation for sustainability was going to come at the federal. It was going to be a thing at the federal level. I don't think it was going to be in the past. I don't think it is today, and I don't expect it to be in the future. Legislation at a federal level is probably not going to solve this. Not likely anyway. Now, at a state level, we're seeing very encouraging things with EPR laws being enacted and implemented. So it's going to be on a state-by-state case where this gets promoted, and infrastructure, which is necessary as well, is going to be facilitated. We see a lot of that happening, but we also see that the value of the space we play in brings a lot more value to all of us and the planet through the whole supply chain than what legislation can bring or what external factors and nonprofits can bring. We just need to be able to believe that. We see that outside. When we walk outside, we see that. We see it every day. We see it in the environment and the challenges the climate is facing these days. And so we just got to believe it and do what's right and continue doing everything else, not just composable, everything else along the way that's going to help us. Because you mentioned our next generation of children. Unfortunately, those legislating today are not worried about what the environment's going to look like in 30 years, but their children will be looking at the effects of their decisions, and their children are not making those decisions for us.
Yeah. We have to be good stewards for our children and for the planet, for sure. So there's a lot of different ways to go about that. But replacing single-use plastic with a compostable. I don't know if you know Kelly Williams, but we used to work together. He's a big person, and he always says earth digestible films, which I kind of liked as a way to talk about compostable. I don't know. I feel like I just keep asking you questions. Nico, do you have stuff for Rodrigo? But again, we're just really passionate about this. We thank you for coming on. Nico, take over, because I'm just grilling this guy, and I feel bad that I'm putting him through.
No, I think that the last question could be like, how would you guide consumers or people that you know to get involved into compostability? Because that's a tricky question. How can we help to get more people involved in these initiatives and a new habit or new way of living? Because as I mentioned before, a lot of people don't know. I didn't know before I was working at TIPA. So I'm still struggling on how to get more people involved and more conscious about it. What would be the recommendation? The
I
recommendation
didn't know
on your
either,
end?
Nico. So I mean, yeah, I'm with you on that one. I didn't know either. I didn't know any better. I'm becoming educated. I'm still learning, and that's what really brings it home. If you live in a big city, maybe in an apartment, high rise, and you don't have your own backyard to do your own composting, what do you do about it? Well, uh, think about most big cities now. They do have a collection system. Maybe it's a paid for service that will do composting for you, and an easy way to start. You see cities like Austin, they'll pick up compostable separate from the rest of your waste, and they're doing something about it. I have family in Austin, and I've seen them separate what they know is to be compostable and put it in the right recycling bin and right compostable bin, and then the right recycling bin, and they know that they're trying to do the best they can. Yeah, they get that option. But where it's a big city, you can find places, even if it's a paid for service, maybe they're not going to ask you to pay much for it. They'll give you something back, and you'll be able to do your part. The sortation that you can do at home can get you started. And if you have a backyard, you'll find that part of the benefits you get back from those types of companies, you and I are familiar with those type of companies, but I know you also use those types of services. They come back and they give you a compost bag. That when you use that in your garden, everything looks a lot nicer when it grows. So you'll see the benefits coming back to it. It's not a change that happens from one day to the next, but you did outline it. It happens a lot faster than anywhere else where we can have a sustainable impact. So I just would invite everyone to seek what's available out there for them, whether it's paid for or with some type of mechanism that makes them feel better, just like they've been doing recycling at home, which is not recycling, it's sorting for recyclers. They can do something for composting, and in a very similar fashion. My only advice is when you do that, don't keep it in the kitchen, keep it outside of your home.
It stinks.
Make sure you cover it well, because you don't want it to be, critters love this stuff. It's good for the environment, and you don't want anything close to that could harm the inside of your home.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to attract some raccoons probably. They do love the food waste. I'm kind of spent on my questions. Nico, do you have anything else that you wanted to go over? Rodrigo, any other points or parting shots that you kind of want to leave with us? I really like that finish because we were talking so much about what the brands and the retailers can do to provide a compostable structure. And Nico really just wrapped that up nice. Like the brands can only do so much. It's still we're buying the packaging, and it's really our responsibility to make sure once we're done interacting with that packaging that it ends up in the correct space. And with compostable, I mean, even your point with people in high rises, a lot of those high rises have like a community garden at the bottom that they could do. I see that in all types of big cities where they have a community garden. You get like a little 10 by 10 foot plot that you could grow stuff at. So I'm excited about the shift. I love what TIPA's doing. I love their dedication to just changing the way that we're doing things for the better for the planet. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to see, Nico, if you have any other questions, or Rodrigo, just give you a couple minutes to say whatever you'd like as a parting shot, and we can wrap up.
Yeah. Tom, I really appreciate, Nico, both of you giving me a chance to talk today. Maybe this is first part of a couple of series that we have over time. But the one thing I do invite you to do, you're in packaging as well. You can make a difference, and you're doing great things already. I mean, just having me here to be able to speak to this, and I can see the passion comes through in you as well. Maybe the next podcast is not about compostables, but when you do the next couple of talks, remind people that there's so many good things happening that they should be looking into. This may be one of them as well. you're doing the right thing yourselves. I know you are, and you want to do it for your company and for the environment. So let's just remind everyone, it doesn't take a lot. It starts with us, right? So thanks for having me. Thanks for being able to give me some airtime and share this with you. Let's, just like you, I could go on forever, but let's just make sure that we keep this going through the rest of your podcast, where you can reference the value of sustainability and one of those solutions being compostable. And in the future, as this continues, we can get back together and talk about it.
I would love that. I mean, it's so dynamic. What we're talking about today might completely change in the next year, right? So, thank you again for your time, Nico. Thank you for putting this together. Again, I love check out TIPA. Make sure you're looking in your brands and making that evaluation of like, what is compostable? What is it? You're going to see, like, if you haven't noticed it yet, go to like a Delta Lounge. You'll see all their silverware now is compostable, and it's in a compostable bag. It's happening whether you're paying attention to it or not. Pay attention, make sure it gets to the right spot. And if we all do our part, we're going to be in a much better place than we are today.
If you go to Canada, to the West Coast, to British Columbia, I was there on vacation. It amazed me how everything is compostable. Everything that you can get around there is compostable. So it depends on where you are, and people are already doing it. So we need to be part of that solution and spread the word and educate, especially with our kids, for those who have kids, and also for our partners and friends. I have educated a lot of my friends on compostabilities, and I start getting involved into that.
Yeah,
me too. Guys, really appreciate it.
My friends tell me to shut up, nerd, when I start talking about that stuff. It's not very helpful. All right. Rodrigo, Nico, thank you so much. Everybody joining us on the podcast, thank you so much for watching. If you like this, please share it, tell your friends. You know, as my son would say, smash the like button, subscribe, all those, things that those YouTube watchers do. So again, thanks everybody for joining us. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you, TIPA. And thank you, Nico. And everybody have a great day.
Have a good day.
Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye.